This is a summary of the book, first chapter of the book, They Say, I Say. I'll start with the first chapter, start with what others are saying. So they begin the story with they're going to a conference. They're listening to a man defending a well-known sociologist. He's giving all of his credentials, all things he's achieved, and they're a little confused why he's giving the speech, and they don't understand what the purpose of the speech is. So they explain why. I explain that if you don't present the opposing position's argument against your argument, it's not useful. If you present a given argument without the opposition, then there's no need to defend it. So that's the first story they start out with. So they say, what is their thesis? What are the things you're responding to? Summarize what they're saying as soon as you can, and go over that text to remind others often. So yeah, it's really important to make sure that you present your thesis statement right out of the gate. Present what you're responding to, the arguments against your position, or what things people have said against your position. Make a quick preview as part of a larger conversation, which claims about the argument, and the positions you're supporting and opposing. It's really important to obviously bring out the opposition and the support for your argument. Also, presenting the opposition's argument benefits you by letting others take some of the burdens off your argument and allowing others to state their positions without bringing it up. So if you present their argument first, it's really helpful because their argument is already self-explanatory. So it takes some of the burden off of you of explaining your claims, and it just gives a given argument already. Then they present the story. George Orwell, in his introduction, he presents two opposing arguments. It's a very powerful way to begin. They say, illustrative quotation. Another way to begin an argument is with an illustrative quotation, a revealing fact, statistic, or relevant anecdote. Make sure that some way the illustration is addressing your argument. So if you're presenting in the beginning of an argument and you have a quote, illustration, a fact, or statistic, make sure it's relevant to your argument and is supporting your argument, obviously. So the first section they cover is anecdotes. A story of an anecdote. Their story is a woman exposing the pride of book lovers versus non-book lovers, and her going into a bookstore and a guy coming up to her and saying, "Hey, you're a book lover, right?" And she not kind of shrugging it off, and not being really happy with him, and saying she wanted to slam her book down on the ground. So that's an anecdote, really relevant to her argument of how prideful or arrogant book lovers are becoming. So then template here. Templates are a popular way for writing because they provide a quick and efficient way to perform the most common move that writers make, challenging widely accepted beliefs, places them on the examining table and analyzing their strengths and weaknesses. This will also help you think analytically. So it helps you understand the argument better. It can help you challenge widely popular beliefs. So these are the templates they offer for introducing what you're saying. Several sociologists have recently suggested that it has become common to discuss. Those are the two. The more recent work of Y and Z have offered a harsh critique of. Here's another template for introducing a standard view. So this is just a standard already. It's a view that's given. Most people believe it. Very common view. These views are more accepted and controversially held views. Americans have always believed that. Controversial wisdom would dictate that. Common sense reasons that. The standard way of thinking about a topic X has it that. It is often said that. My whole life I have heard it said that. You would think that. Many people assume that. That's that's actually eight points. 8 points in this template for standard view, presenting a standard view. Templates for making what they say something you say, presenting beliefs as your own can be an effective strategy. So these templates would be a belief I once held or ambivalent about is I've always believed that. When I was a child, I used to think that although now I believe, I once believed, although I should believe better, although I should know better now, I cannot help but thinking that in the same way that I believed, I also believe that. Then there's templates for introducing something implied or assumed. That this goes back to the, it's relevant to the standard view templates. Although none of them have ever said it, they believe one of the implications of X treatment is, although X does not say it so directly, she assumes that when they rarely admit it as much, X often take for granted that X. Then there are templates for introducing an opposing debate. Summarize two or more views makes you more reliable, and it also helps you commit to a position before you're ready. Not commit to a position before you're ready to. So summarizing both beliefs without picking a side, it helps you not take a position. So a person can't put you in their box, and so you can have the audience listening. Whereas some people, when they listen to your argument and they hear the opposing argument, like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. So some of these templates are in discussion of X. One controversial issue is, on the hand, X argues this, X argues that. On the other hand, X contends that. There even argue. My view is the equal side of the argument is used in an essay about rationalism and empiricism, representing an equal side to both. So they present an argument of rationalism versus empiricism. And in this argument, they present both sides equally, so that you know both sides. And it doesn't look like they're going for either one. They're not suggesting more for either side. They're bringing a pretty good argument for both sides. That's what they used in this argument, and that's how you can use it. Template. Another way to open a debate is by starting with a proposition that many people agree with, and highlighting the points that which you ultimately disagree. So presenting an argument with the positions everyone agrees with, and then starting to show where you start to fall off or disagree. When it comes to topic X, most of us would readily agree that where an agreement usually ends, however, it is the position, it is on this question of is, whereas some are convinced that others maintain that. Then they have a story about Thomas Frank presenting political argument against the friction in the United States between both parties, the political landscape, and others. Matter has still some controversy. This is an argument where they presented both sides, but then they just basically said, there's still controversy over both of these opinions. Then we get to the reminder phase. Keep in mind that what they say, after summarizing, always keep in mind what they say. Don't forget the original views and keep them in mind throughout the argument. They won't follow you unless you keep reminding them what the claims are and responding to them. Even when presenting your terms, you need to keep returning to what they say. The longer and more complicated your text, the greater chances of the reader forgetting the ideas originally motivated it, unless you clearly lay them out at the beginning and strategically return to them throughout the text. In conclusion, then, as suggested earlier, defenders, you always need to defend both sides. So present your argument, make sure you remind them throughout the argument the opposing argument. And in conclusion, don't forget to present both sides equally. Returning to the argument and relating sentences ensures that your argument contains some sense of mission and urgency from start to finish. In short, to help ensure your argument is a general response to others' views rather than just a set of observations about a different subject. It's very important to always start with what others are saying and continue keeping that in the reader's mind. Then they have a list of exercises you can do. I'm not going to include those in this. So basically, I would say the total summary of the whole argument, the whole summary of the whole first chapter is they present a story, about why you need to summarize, why you need to constantly bring it back to the reader, why you need to make it quick at the beginning of the argument, why you need to present the opposing argument's side first and very quickly. And they have a story about George Orwell doing that and then doing both sides. Then they talk about using an illustration, an illustration and an anecdote to present the argument, but still the anecdote is relevant to an opposing argument that will help set up your argument. So it's always going back to the original claim against your argument. So always pitting your claim against the opposing argument right at the beginning and then doing that throughout the argument. Then they have some templates. I'm not going to read those out. Templates for introducing standard views, template for saying what they say, and then summarizing your own beliefs. Templates for presenting implied and assumed arguments. Templates for introducing a debate, so templates for starting a debate. Templates for opening with a proposition that many people agree with, so basically ways you can open your debate with a proposition they believe with, and then lead to where you disagree with. Then they have a story about Thomas Frank. They have a reminder to always bring it back, obviously, from what they say. Always bring it back to what they say, and then you can say what you're saying. And it makes your argument stronger. And then in conclusion, defending both sides, and then, again, repeat the other person's views. So they think most of this chapter is present the other person's arguments and bring it back up and make sure you're bringing both sides. So you're obviously going to present your ideas throughout the book, because that's throughout the chapter. You're going to present your ideas when you write something, because that's the whole point, is arguing. But they're trying to get every single person who's writing to bring up the argument first and then periodically return to it, keep it in the reader's mind. I would say that's the summary of basically the whole chapter. And then they have some templates for explaining how to word this better, or how to introduce certain topics, or how to navigate bringing the other person's side into it. But basically the whole chapter is just, like I'm going to say again, bring the person's argument in, summarize the person's argument quickly, and then keep it in the reader's mind most of the book. So some discussion questions I was thinking. Discussion questions we could talk about. Maybe views, how we could introduce certain challenging views. For instance, if you had a really politically divisive opinion that you have to present, how you might best do that. Maybe some better. Yeah, I would say that. And then maybe some anecdotes you could use at the beginning of your argument. How we might best use these templates. So what places you could use these templates. How to best present both sides of an argument. What we thought about maybe some of the stories and how they presented these stories. Like the Thomas Frank story, or the George Orwell, or even the opening argument where they listened to the person speak and they didn't know what he was arguing for. But yeah, these are just some questions that we could start the discussion with. I would think it would be kind of difficult. I'm just thinking it's kind of difficult to argue or discuss. I just think it would be kind of boring, but we'll see however that turns out. But yeah, that's basically the summary. It's a very long summary. I could break it down a lot simpler and just say, bring the argument out and then repeat it, and then make sure you get both sides. That would basically be the whole book. But yeah, that's my summary of the chapter. Start with what they are saying in the book. They say, I say.